Shivani, and I'm the PR manager for UMass Fencing. It is so great to be here today and to see everyone so excited for this event. This has been something that we've been planning for the whole academic year, so it's finally great that we've been able to get to this point. Before we start the event, I'd like to briefly go over the event program. In a couple of minutes, we'll be starting the Q&A portion of this program. This will be presented by our club president, Julie, foil captain, Jacob, and one of our club members, Seth. He doesn't fence foil, but he's happy to be here. After this, we will transition to the meet and greet portion of this event. This will take place alongside the windows to your right. We ask that you follow Jacob and Seth as they guide you row by row to the meet and greet. After which, you can exit the student union ballroom using the main entrance doors, as this meet and greet will conclude our event. We also ask for your patience as we transition between these portions of this event. I'm sure you guys are all eagerly waiting for the event to start, so without further ado, let me introduce you to the stage two-time Olympic bronze medalist, 2019 Team World Champion, 2023 Grand Prix Champion, en route to the 2024 Paris Summer Olympics, and the fencer we all look up to for his dedication and skill in the sport, Gerek Meinhardt. Let me also introduce four-time NCAA champion, 2023 Grand Prix champion, the first American to win a gold medal in Olympic foil fencing in the 2020 Tokyo Olympics, the world #1 women's foilist, and an inspiration to all of us, Lee Kiefer. We will now begin the Q&A portion of this event.
Okay, thank you guys so much for being here, everyone who's joined us today. And thank you too for coming all the way from Lexington to be with us. Sorry, Shivani, I did walk out your iPad, sorry. I will wait another. It's time now for 5 minutes. Anywho, to start off, we just want to start with a big general question, something every single one of us has been wanting to know. What is each of your favorite fencing actions?
Ooh, it's so hard. There's so many good ones. I would say, traditionally, I like a good one, like Jedi sprint down the whole strip, and then like finishing with like a really powerful skewer. I don't know, you can't go wrong with that.
Before I answer that, thank you all for being here, and thank you for putting this together and bringing us here. We're excited to be here. A little nervous, honestly, but yeah, just really excited to be here. My favorite action, I think the flashy moves are obviously like very fun, they look cool, but I think my favorite action would be like a well-timed stop hit, like when your opponent's attacking. I'm not necessarily like the shortest guy on the circuit, but there are also a lot of fencers taller than me, and getting a stop hit against someone taller is super satisfying. Lee's actually, she does it against me. I'm a lot taller than her, and I feel like it's very satisfying when you get that right time.
Yeah, do you all know what a unicorn touch is? It's when you're in a bout and then you do something awesome by accident and you're like, how did that even happen? At one of the tournaments this year, I was fencing someone and I like accidentally stopped him on the underarm. And I was like, how did I do that? I'm so small. But those are actually my favorite, is when you just somehow put together something beautiful and unexpected.
So, Gerek, you mentioned something pretty simple, but you also mentioned something a little flashy. So, what's your favorite action, maybe when your coach isn't looking?
So, when I was growing up, our fencing club was 2 floors. The space that we were using was 2 floors, and our coach would often give lessons on the bottom floor while we all got to fence upstairs. And I think that is part of why I am good at getting flashy touches sometimes, because we would just go wild up there without our coach nearby. I think just running and flicking and, a good parry push behind the back. Yeah.
Who were your idols growing up, fencing or otherwise?
I have kind of a weird answer to this question. So growing up, there were two very important figures in my life. One of them was my really good friend Nzinga, who taught me, she empowered me as like a female who was in the same age group, who was trying to go for teams. So she taught me like how to cheer on people, how to be like a tough woman, but I also had a nemesis. And that kind of like fueled the fire of being competitive and really always having that laser focus, because I'm not gonna throw out any names, but it wasn't good when we were on this trip together. So honestly, it was a combination of those two people who I think were pivotal in my development.
And for me, outside of fencing, my older sister, she's still my idol to this day. She played D1 basketball and was really committed to athletics, but also her academics, and that she was a big role model for me back then. Now she manages to balance, her work with her family and her friends, and so that's inspirational to me as well. In fencing, I don't think I didn't have specific idols, but similar to Lee, a lot of my rivals that pushed me, we wanted to always one up each other, and that's how we all got better over time. But also when I was a youth fencer, the adult fencers at the club that I was at, or in the local area that would fence with me and give me the time of day when I was this little pipsqueak, that was really important for my development and something I really appreciated.
As a follow-up, how do you both feel knowing that you're someone's idol right now?
It's an honor. Sometimes it's pressure, but overall, it's really a gift to be able to know this and be able to practice kindness and just being better as a human.
Yeah, I think that most important for us, we want people to see how much we love fencing, enjoy it. We try to be good sports sometimes, if it's heated in a tournament, you lose your cool, but for the most part, we're out there working hard, loving the sport, and regardless of the results, I feel like hopefully that's something that people can also aspire to do at their own level.
So, what's your single favorite touch? What's your single favorite touch you've ever scored?
For me, 2019 World Championships in Budapest, we were in the gold medal team match against France, and I think it was my third bout of the three, and I was infighting with one of the French fencers, ducked, and then got out of position and decided to improvise and jumped and took a kind of parry repost and hit him around my shoulder, which was a flashy touch that worked. And so that was exciting, but more importantly, it contributed to our team finally winning World Championship gold after being ranked #1 and falling short multiple years in a row. So the moment and what it contributed to was the most important thing.
That's a tough one. I would say I am really bad at doing point and line, and I can probably count on one hand how many times I've been able to successfully do that in my whole career. But yeah, I remember, I think it was 6 years ago, I finally got one at a World Cup, and my opponent was so, frustrated, but I was just like, this could be my first and last point in line. So I'm working on that this year.
So, for those of you in the audience that don't know, Lee recently won gold at a Grand Prix in Washington in the United States. And that was the first senior international event to take place in the US since 2019. So I wanted to ask, how did it feel competing on home soil for the first time in so long?
Yeah, I think one of the weird things is that at most of our tournaments, we do not have an audience. I mean, you know, fencing is a small sport, and I'm used to having that nice and quiet to focus. So showing up to a tournament that's also having a youth tournament at the same time, there's a lot of really cute kids running around. So there's moments where it was 100% distracting. But I think one of my biggest moments of the tournament is when I had an epic comeback. I was down 11-4, and I think the energy from the crowd definitely helped play into my own confidence and getting back in it. And I can go into that comeback more later if you want, but yeah, I think honestly fencing did have more spectators. I think that energy could definitely be used well.
Yeah, I think 20 years ago, well, it was really cool. I think UMass Fencing did a great job hosting it. I think all the international fencers had a really amazing time in DC and being at the tournament. It was also really cool the amount of young youth fencers that were there and how enthusiastic they were. And I think 20 years ago when I first started going to some of these World Cups, I don't think these foreign fencers would have expected how big fencing, how much fencing has grown in the US and the enthusiasm. So it was really cool to see that. And obviously Lee won, gave our crowd a good show, and Nick also won the men's event, so it couldn't have gone any better.
We'd like to transition now into some questions about fencing-specific comparisons and comparisons between different tournaments. How did you two develop your respective styles, and what choices did you make specifically when finding them?
One of the things we love most about fencing is that there isn't one style that is correct, that's successful. Even if you look at my teammates right now, like Nick, Miles, Alexander, we all have drastically different fencing styles. Alexander and I grew up with the same coach, at the same club, fencing each other, and I don't think that there are a ton of similarities if you just see us fence. And I think everyone develops their own style for what's successful. It wasn't necessarily intentional. When I was just starting, I was actually very timid. Some people thought I was a little too timid and that I wasn't going to be successful because I didn't have that killer instinct, but eventually I kind of overcompensated and became way too aggressive, and I was rushing and just running onto my opponent's point. I think that evolved further, with some injuries. I've had to further adapt my fencing, and it's just constantly evolving, and that's what's so exciting about fencing is not only are there so many styles that can be successful and that you can find your own, but also your own style can change tournament to tournament, and there are things that you can always be working on to improve and adapt to what your opponents might be doing against you.
So I think my style is a combination of my personality and my coaching. Unlike Gerek, I always had the killer instinct. Actually, I really hated to lose growing up, and honestly, I had to learn how to become a good sport. That was a big part of fencing growing up, was controlling emotions and attitudes, which I still work on to this day. But yes, going forward a lot, and I started working with my coach, God Cause, back in 2004. And he complimented me really well because he also really enjoys big actions, big, beautiful attacks. And I think that is a good fit because I was a petite fencer. So it doesn't necessarily mean I was gonna be successful going forward with my arm back. But he wasn't like, okay, you're small, you need to reel it in, you need to be more defensive. I think he gave me a lot of tools and a lot of freedom to play. And at first, that looked like me running at people and crashing into them, but then I developed infighting skills. And then eventually I would come forward and maybe I learned how to remise better, change direction. So there was an evolution of how I attacked and like the different types of attacks I could do. And now in my old age, I'm just filling in the gaps, trying to do everything else.
So what are some things that Olympic level fencers do that fencers at the national level don't?
I would say a lot of my international opponents are really good at off the line, like meeting in the middle. Where I struggle a lot is, let's say, fencing like the Italians or the French and just getting stuffed because their arm shoots out so fast.
I think that first of all, there are less differences than you might think as far as like the approach, the training, and the mindset at tournaments. But one thing I do see different at the high level is that adjustments are made maybe quicker in the bout. Like your opponent scores a couple points on you in a row doing something and taking advantage of something that you're doing wrong. At the high level, like if you don't make that change really quickly, the bout's going to get away from you and you're going to be in too big of a hole to come back. And I feel like at the Olympic level, when both fencers are fencing well, adjustments are made quickly, and there are many that are made during the course of the bout.
So you mentioned that when a fencer has a plan, it doesn't work out, they have to make an adjustment. So how do you usually go about doing that? Specifically, are there any like mental models or frameworks that you rely on?
I think taking time and even sometimes creating a little bit of time for you to analyze what's going on, to like not let the bout get away from you too quickly is super important. Obviously, don't delay the bout and get your referee angry at you, but take your time, like process what your coach is saying, process what you're seeing happening, so that you can mentally like have the energy to make the change that you need to. A lot of times, also trust that like maybe coming out of a 1 minute break, you had an idea of what you had to do, and you tried to implement that and got scored on. Maybe you just executed it incorrectly, and like you don't need to just completely toss that idea. Maybe like modify it a little, go to a different target. But on the flip side of that, you also have to not be too prideful if something doesn't work, and think, oh, I just need to, like, I'm better than my opponent, I can hit them this time, I'm faster than them, like, it's gonna work. Like, sometimes, something's not working. Even if you do think that, try something different. Maybe you can beat them a different way.
Yeah, like an example of when you're not winning or it's not going well, Gerek tells me this all the time, to like not scrap everything from your initial plan. Like, let's use attacking again. So a lot of people are super aggressive against me because I'm aggressive and they know I feel uncomfortable getting boxed in. So I'm like, okay, I need to still put the pressure on them. And if I go forward and let's say I miss twice, I shouldn't immediately start like backpedaling and now I'm just like fencing in the back of my strip like against a certain fencer where I don't want to. So like maybe I'm doing like a different tempo, maybe I'm like pushing them and then like doing defense on their side of the strip. So yeah, Gerek coaches me a lot, and like some of these things are telling you like we put into play like all the time. But I am like very simple mentally, so like I have just like different buckets of things that I can try to change, and I don't pick all of them at once. I usually pick one. So maybe I'll say like, where do I want to fence on the strip? So that's like one idea to change. Another idea is like, do I need to take the blade more? My most common thing is like, how are my intensity levels? Like sometimes I just need to be a little bit more buckled down, like with my footwork, with letting my hand out so I'm not hesitating. Yeah, so kind of just like simple concepts and then like working within that
So you mentioned a 1 minute break there. For those in the audience who aren't familiar with fencing, we usually fence for 3 periods with a 1 minute break in between each one. So can you talk a little bit more about like what your goal is in that 1 minute or what's going through your mind?
Yeah, so Lee and I both are pretty aggressive, and even when we're not attacking a lot, because maybe our attacks aren't working that out, we're still moving a lot. So usually, that 1 minute break, I'm very tired if it gets to that point. So drinking water, wipe my sweat with my towel, trying to catch my breath. But then of course, with your coach, it's about like figuring out what you've been doing that's working well, what your opponent has been doing against you that's working well for them, what they might change going into this next period of fencing to try and pull away from you, and how you're going to adapt to that. So those are all important. Sometimes you can get too much information and have too many ideas coming out of that 1 minute break, so it's also important to like, okay, give yourself 15 seconds at the end of that 1 minute break to be like, what am I going to do this first touch? Like, I can't have all these ideas and execute them all on the first point. So it's like, that's great, I have the general framework. Now, like, what's the most important thing for me to do and try and execute on this first point, and then go from there.
Yeah, when I coach Gerek sometimes, I feel like my first thought is like, hey Gerek, what do you think you should do? Because sometimes, like, or he has all the answers. I feel like everyone has the answers. Like, most of us have been fencing at least a few years, and you're training and you're thinking about fencing, and like, you know what you're capable of in your body. And like, I'm definitely open to outsourcing for ideas, but like, I think I see the most success when the fencer can do most of the problem solving themselves.
So the NCAA fencing championships happened last week. As former NCAA champions yourselves, is there any aspect of NCAA's that is more intense than, say, a world championship or the Olympics?
I think the energy is just insane at NCAAs, having all your teammates there. I honestly felt so much more pressure at NCAAs than any of these other tournaments because, yeah, I felt like I had a job and I owed it to them to produce those numbers, which in my regular life, I don't feel like I owe anyone ever anything. This is like a mature thought process where it's easy to get bogged down, I think, with a lot of expectations. So now in my life, I manage it better, but in college, it was such a high or such a low having teammates around you. But like, at the end of the day, like, you all care about each other and you just want everyone to fight hard. So I think when you come to terms that everyone's on the same page, it becomes easier.
Yeah, I think that emotions are so high at NCAAs because you feel that pressure of not only how each 5-point battle impacts your ranking and like your chances, but also how it impacts the team's ranking. And as much as you try not to feel that, you do feel the pressure and put that on yourself because you want to do well for your teammates. And so I think it's all the more important to try as much as you can to like keep your emotions in check. Like, maybe you disagree with the call, or you're frustrated that your light didn't go off, or you missed on the last point, you lose a bout. Well, you have 22 more bouts after this, so you have to move past it and focus on the important thing, which is like what you're going to do in the next bout and how you're going to, deal with that first point. Because if you start getting all caught up in a lot of things that you can't control, or get caught up in the fact that you've lost 2 or 3 matches and you're unhappy with where you are at that point, you're not going to be able to flip the switch and improve on that for yourself or for your team.
So Lee, you mentioned having the pressure of the expectations of your teammates and NCAAs. Can you talk about that in your international career, maybe comparing the difference between going to the London Olympics and now going to Paris, especially with the new hardware?
Yes. So my first Olympics was London 2012. I was a baby. amazing. I was so free. I think I got a way better result than my ranking showed beforehand. So yeah, just like a lot of really good energy. And then moving to 2016, I had a lot more experience. I took a year off to train, so I like really devoted myself. And I got to Olympics, and I didn't fence well, and my opponent fenced great, and I lost in an early round, and I was absolutely devastated. Yeah, it was really hard. Like I went back to school the next year, and I was like, I'm not enjoying fencing anymore. I don't know if I'm gonna retire or not. But honestly, it was my college friends and Gerek, this lovely human, who helped me find my love for fencing again. And yeah, that was a really special year. And I actually rose to #1 in the world. I was going to international tournaments just to stay fresh for collegiate fencing. And I guess, yeah, psychologically, I was able to just like open up and, I don't know, find myself and find like my love for fencing. You're gonna cry, I'm so sorry. But yes, then that leads us to Tokyo. So obviously I decided to keep fencing after. And Tokyo had a different flavor of lead up because I had started medical school, so for 2 years I was trying to do both, and juggling that was really wearing me thin, so I took another year off to train. But now we have a pandemic, so we're like, are the Olympics gonna happen? Am I still doing fencing how I want with like this whole new level of school? And I think we spent the year like practicing a lot of gratitude and being like, our result does not determine like our value. And I think mentally we were really prepared along with physically. And like, yeah, the day turned out beautiful. And I think if it hadn't, then it still would have been an amazing tournament. I think that's probably the difference between Rio and Tokyo, is I think it was gonna be success no matter what. Sorry, I talked too much.
No, that's amazing. But with that, something a lot of us would like to know, and one thing that's unique about club fencing is that we all choose to continue to do fencing, but we're all still very academically focused and driven. So one thing a lot of us are wondering is how you balance competing at the highest level of fencing and doing well in medical school.
I think our answer might be disappointing because there isn't a secret to it. It was a struggle for us, honestly. In college, like, we learned to obviously do work on the plane, like do work when you can, sleep a little less. I think we were lucky that our coaches understood like the amount of traveling we were doing, the importance of us like studying for our exams, and so they did give us some grace and allow us to take time off from practice occasionally, so that we not only got the sleep we needed to do those things, but also just like mentally could stay fresh and be excited to come to fencing practice when we actually could. Medical school was a whole different beast as far as balancing fencing with that, and honestly the results in fencing suffered a lot, and that's part of why we're both on leaves of absence right now, because we wanted to give 100% towards us qualifying and preparing for this Summer Olympics. So there's no secret, it's tough, it's been hard for us, and I think just knowing that like you're doing both because you care about them both, and it's only tough, and like you're only making the sacrifices because you do want to do them, both of them, that makes it worth the challenge.
Yeah, I'm one of those people who burns a lot of energy being hard on myself. So like while I was doing those things, I was like, Lee, you're like doing a shitty job at school, you're doing a shitty job at fencing, and I think I'm starting to learn just like do what you can, be a little kind to yourself, and yeah, pick the space you want to be in, and you can do it. Look for those little successes.
One thing I think that is important is as to the best that you can, like when you're at fencing practice, try not to think about the piles of assignments or studying that you have to do the rest of the night, because then you're gonna have 70% of your attention on fencing, on that fencing practice, which is a waste because you're taking that time away from studying too to be there. So I think trying to separate the two as much as you can, and just committing to the time that you have in each of those spaces is important to at least getting as much as you can out of what you're doing.
And one thing related to you guys being in med school that put a different light into how you view fencing. How does being in med school and learning all of these different things about like kinesiology and such does it help with your fencing? Do you apply the knowledge you've learned from your medical career to fencing?
I guess one thing I've learned is that in order to be good at anything, it takes a lot of time and practice. And I think that was part of my like imposter syndrome thing with medical school. I'm just like, everyone's like, she's an Olympian, like, shouldn't she be top of her class? I'm just like, guys, it doesn't work like that. Like, I haven't put in that time, and like, we'll get there someday. But like, I have to remind myself, it's like, practice and time and work contribute a lot. And then also being semi-health literate, now that we're older and we have a lot of injuries, like we really take care of our bodies. We do the warm up, we do probably 30 minutes an hour recovery after each practice, which drives me crazy because it's not fun, but that includes icing and rolling and stretching. So yeah, that's where we're at.
So you mentioned like being good to your body, and of course you have to balance academics, flights, everything in between. How much sleep do you both get?
We take a lot of naps, which we can afford to do because we're on leaves of absence from school, so it varies a lot, honestly. I'd say we try to get 8 hours of sleep, plus a nap, but obviously when we're traveling sometimes it's a lot less than that.
How much sleep are you all getting?
Not quite 8 hours.
Our team is soon enough leaving us getting enough sleep. We're going to go to nationals in 2 weeks, so we're just wondering how to maintain peak performance while under the stress of travel, because we will be on a 10-hour train ride.
I would say control the things you can control. One thing that is highly overlooked is nutrition, especially nutrition throughout the day. Like for instance, when I'm at a World Cup, I have a big breakfast, and after my first bout 2 hours later, I choke down that banana, I choke down that bar. I have those apple sauces and energy gels, so timing that and doing things that are uncomfortable, you don't want to, kind of make you that professional who cares, who's put that time, effort, and money into doing their sport. So yeah, the beginning of each season, I feel like I'm reinventing the wheel, but I literally write down these things that I can do, that I can control, that will have an effect on my performance.
Yeah, I'd say for your long train ride, 10 hours is a long train ride. making sure to like hydrate. There are things you can control, like Lee said. Get up, walk around, stretch. I'm on the plane near the bathroom, stretching, looking weird, but it's like I'm going to the tournament to do well, and it's the least I can do for myself. So I think those are some of the things you can try to do that you can control.
Yeah, one thing our strength coach has us do, like after a plane ride or like just a long transportation, is like the night we get in, we actually do like maybe like a 15-minute like low effort light. Just like get your body moving, try to get that blood circulating again. So that could be something to help get adjusted.
Or like jumping jacks and squats and stuff you can do in your hotel room too, if you don't have access to equipment.
And related to that, I'm not going to make eye contact, but you did mention how important warm-ups are. But, I'm just kidding. What is one pre-tournament practice, either mental or physical, that you must do before every tournament that you'll do before the next one you're having?
Lee and I have pretty different warm-up routines, but we both do have a typical warm-up that we consistently do, and it's something that we often do at practice too. But regardless, I think having a routine that you're used to come competition day, like, gets rid of one thing that you have to think about. So you get to the tournament and you're not like, oh, what time is it? When should I start warming up? What should I do? It's like, okay, it's an hour before I fence or whatever it feels right to you based off of the event, and you're like gonna go through your routine. You're not thinking, you're listening to some music maybe and just getting in the zone and not having to think about too many things and kind of resting your brain and so that you can be ready to instead use that on the fencing later in the day.
Yeah, I spend a lot of my warm-up time bouting. I think more than other people. I think no matter if I do my warm-up helps, but like I'm still nervous, I'm still cold and tight, so I try to probably give myself half an hour to bout and rest, and bout and rest. So that's one of the tools I have.
And I don't do 30 minutes of bouting. I'll be like, all right, I'm going home if I did that. But it is important for me, like after I warm up a little bit with one of my teammates, that for both of us, that we finish with like a 5-point bout. And one of us will say fence so that you get used to hearing like as if the referee's saying fence. And then intensity, like you fence that 5-point bout like it's a tournament, you want to beat your teammate. Just because like getting that intensity, getting ready, like can be the difference between the first 2 points of the tournament.
Following up on this notion of controlling sort of, or letting your mind rest as much as possible, do you check to see who you're fencing in the next bout in advance? And if so, how far in advance?
Yeah, I know, like depending on the tournament format, like you'll know who you're fencing or you won't, or it'll be a weird amount of time. When we're at World Cups, part of our routine the night before is watching video on our opponent. But let's say I fence someone like 10 times this season, sometimes we just run to the same people over and over again. As long as I have like a conversation or just writing down certain things that I don't want to forget, maybe from my last encounter. But if it's like a NAC or college meet, like I will watch someone. I will be that creepy person checking out how they're moving that day, maybe what some of their tendencies are. And as fencers, we're not one size fit all. And I know people where the anxiety gets too high, so it's better for them maybe not to watch and then just come out strong. So we're telling you guys like what our routine is that we've developed, but like there's not a perfect formula for anyone. So like don't feel bad if you all do things different.
I agree with Lee, there's no one right answer. I personally do like to watch video, like she said, and I think that obviously fencers can change, and like you watch one bout online, and then there have been situations where I was like, I watched the video, they did this one action really well, I went to fence the next day, and I was so stubborn, I was like, this next time they're gonna do that action, and they kept doing something different, and they beat me, and I was like, oh wow, like I should have changed. So obviously, like you have to be ready for the fencer to change, but I do think that when you're at a NAC or at a college meet, like, and you're in a pool watching what other people are doing, especially if you don't know them very well, it's helpful to see if they have like a unique counterattack or they do something that's surprising, because that one point, potentially being ready for something is even more meaningful, like in a 5-point college meet battle.
All right, can you talk a bit about how you support your teammates in both team events and individual events?
I think that it really starts like before the match, going up to them, and like Lee mentioned earlier when she was talking about coaching me, asking me like what I am thinking. I think that's important. Obviously lending any advice if you have experience with that fencer in the past, but also just hearing them out and listening to their ideas will give them confidence that, oh, this plan was verified with my close confidant, and so now I'm going to go in with a little more confidence. And then during the match, personally, I don't like to give too much technical advice. It obviously depends on the situation, but I think sometimes it can get overwhelming to hear a lot of very specific actions. And also, like we said earlier, sometimes the most effective thing is going to be what the fencer feels comfortable doing. So like me telling them what I would do, if they're not comfortable doing that action, may not be very helpful. So with my teammates, I just try to be more encouraging rather than give very specific advice, just maybe general things about like pushing more, attacking more, not being too defensive if that's the situation, but otherwise just like telling them I believe in them and that they were like close and just needed to like put a little more energy into the end of that action.
One fun thing about our training situation back in Kentucky is at Bluegrass Fencers Club, like everyone trains at once. So they're like 6-year-olds in the room, and there's like Gerek, who's like turning 34 this year. And I think talking with everyone, fencing, just watching, like, I think, yeah, like kind of what Gerek was saying, like meeting people where they're at. Like, I'll tell the 6-year-old, I'll say like, you get 2 points if you do a parry post, like, so just like motivating them in some way versus maybe having like more complicated discussions about like distance or like being stuck in patterns. And yeah, I feel like that's like how I respect my teammates, is like I get to know them and try to figure out like what works for them, which might be different than what works for me.
So you were just talking about the importance of getting to know your team, and Gerek, you've had a pretty, I think, unique experience in that you've had a pretty consistent team composition over the past decade. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, Alexander has been on the last, this will be our 4th Olympics together. Miles was there as well in 2012. But we've had like an injection of youth, like Nikita Nikitkin has joined the team, and obviously Chase at World Championships was a huge part of us winning bronze that year, the reason why we won bronze that year. So I think it's interesting, and of course, like I'm very close with my teammates that have been on all these Olympic and World Championship teams with me, but it's also super exciting to see the young guys, and I think without a lot of them who may not be making world teams, but are still incredible fencers, without them getting the results, and like we wouldn't be where we are either, still doing well, because they motivated us to like, hey, we need to step this up. Like these young guys are amazing and have so much potential. So It's exciting that I'm the old guy and I'm still around, but the next generation is really strong, and that'll be cool to see too over the coming years.
How do you two stay focused and about, especially in crucial moments?
I guess how I always enter about, like, no matter who I'm fencing at a competition, I'm always like, Lee, you have to use your voice. Because, like, using my voice increases the power of my hit. I think it makes me bend my knees more and get back to all those fencing things my coach hounded growing up. But yeah, staying focused at the end of the bout is definitely harder, especially when you're tired. So I guess, so Washington DC Grand Prix, I was fencing a French girl I hadn't fenced before, and after the first period or early into the second period, I think I was down 11-4, which is not good. Don't do that. She was looking great, honestly. Her timing was like a little bit weird for me, and I was having trouble adjusting. At the same time, the bout, like when I wasn't scoring points, I was like, I feel like I still feel good. I still feel like I'm moving, trying to do actions, but like something is just slightly off. And I got to the 1 minute period, and I guess my biggest thought bucket of change was like discipline. Like there's no way like this girl should be like attacking me and I'm like counterattacking too early and she's like finishing. Like I should retreat at a distance. Like this is something I can do. So it's like, okay, step one, have discipline. And I was like, step two, I think maybe instead of me like trying to move in and out and like manipulate the distance so intensely like I like to do, like I'm actually gonna chill and I think I'm gonna just like approach her a little bit slower and then either finish or do second intention. But I was like, it sounds like a lot, but honestly it's like not so complicated. Like I had two things I really had to think about, was like really going backwards or just like committing to like going forward. And then she started to panic and I could do other actions. I don't know if anyone watched the bout. Like what I'm saying might not necessarily reflect what you saw, but like then it opens up when someone gets a little bit flustered and you have more options. But yeah, just there's moments where like you have to stay like cool and calm, and then there's other moments where you have to, I think, up the intensity. And I think in that case, I was cool and calm.
I think on my best days of fencing, things come easy. Like I'm just feeling good, I'm in a groove. I don't need to worry too much about focusing because it's just like everything's working great. Doesn't happen that often, but other times I feel like I constantly have like an internal pep talk with myself, and I think it's so easy, like when you're traveling, you're jet lagged, or you're traveling on a 10-hour train ride to like tell you, like let these thoughts of doubt creep in, like, oh, I'm so tired, like it's okay, like if I lose this, I'm down 3-0, like I don't know if I can do this. Like these thoughts of doubt creep in, and I'm constantly telling myself, like, focus, like you want this, like you travel all the way here, you've been working all year for this bout, like fight, like just focus, like simple things like that. It isn't even necessarily a tactical thing, because there have been so many times in my career where like I had a small injury, or maybe it's a big injury, but regardless, like I let those doubts get in my mind and I maybe didn't give 100% because I just felt like I was gonna lose, and I felt like it was an uphill battle anyway because of these things that were going on. And then at the end of the day, like, I lose and I'm sitting there and I'm like, oh, why didn't I try harder? No one cares. Like, all that matters is that I just lost that bout. Like, and so I feel like having this pep talk with myself is something that's really important. And maybe Lee doesn't need the internal pep talk, but when she's saying like she just needed to get herself to retreat at a distance and like not counterattack early, like I imagine like her that it was more than her just saying, okay, I'm gonna do that. It was like work, you gotta like retreat, like take that extra retreat, and it's us just motivating ourselves. And obviously it helps having other people do that too, whether it's your coaches or your teammates, but personally, like, nothing's more effective than me like buying in and really convincing myself that I need to like fight for that next point.
So you talked about having motivation in sort of the scope of your career. You kind of achieved all there is to achieve in the sport. So what keeps you motivated, and like what new goals are you setting to keep yourself challenged?
I feel like in my career and like per season, it like comes in waves of what I feel confident with or like what skills I have. So like as I mentioned, when I was younger, even now, like I push a lot, and that's my comfort. And November, October this year, I was like scared to go backwards, you all. Like, you don't realize things like this, but I was just like, oh my God, like once they start to push me towards my end, like I just counterattack or I like don't have a good idea. So like, yeah, I have goals where I'm like, I want to work the end, and like that is so fun for me. Like I love fencing because there's just small things that can bring so much joy. And I'd like to say at this last World Cup, I was like dancing all over that back line, and it was amazing. And like maybe at some point I'll lose confidence doing that again, but like I always find like small goals to work towards, and it's so fun.
Yeah, we've accomplished a lot, but I think not very many people have been as consistent as Lee has been the past 2 years. For the rest of us, like, you get very quick reminders and you get very humbled very quickly, like coming off of a good tournament. Like, there's plenty of motivation like, for you to improve on in the next tournament. I think we all have like our long-term goals and things like that we dream about accomplishing, like Olympic champion. But more importantly, I think these short-term goals, kind of like Lee said, for me, I don't come off of the tournament and say, okay, the next one I want to do one round better and like make a top 8. It's more of like strategically, like as Lee was talking about, I want to improve on this thing that I did very poorly at a tournament, and maybe the next tournament I get the exact same result on paper, but I can see it as a success if I was able to improve on something that I hadn't been doing well earlier in the season, like counterattacking too early, and ultimately like being able to accomplish that, whether or not the results are going up, will hopefully help me progress towards accomplishing the bigger long-term goals that we have.
And another side note, fencing can help you meet amazing people. Like, I'm married to Gerek, and honestly, a few years ago, I would have been like too nervous to like do a Q&A. Like, I would have been like, I'm definitely not doing that. And like, here I am, having some growth and learning new skills that fencing led me to. So I feel like all of us probably feel that way. Like, it's affected something outside of fencing too.
What do you think does your long-term relationship with the sport look like? Will you become a coach, a referee, FIE administrator?
I'm not sure what my future in fencing looks like after we're done fencing. I don't think I'll become a referee because I don't think I could be on the other side of all of that anger from fencers. God bless them for what they put up with. But yeah, I'm also curious. I definitely want to stay in fencing. I'm not sure what that'll look like. And also, like, it'll probably change over the course of my life too. So I'm excited to stay part of the community.
If anyone has any ideas, please pass them away.
And I mean, aside from long term, if you have any more short term goals in fencing, such as, I believe, Los Angeles is making a new subway system for the 2028 Olympics.
That's not short term. That's so far off. Obviously, we're getting ready for Paris now. We have a few tournaments left before then, but I think we're both obviously least capable of winning gold. I think we're both capable of winning gold individually, but we're really excited to work with our teams in these next few months. Also preparing, watching video, training together to hopefully come home with team gold too.
Yeah, we have been part of the world team for a long time, and at our first Olympics, like, there was never any hope for any medals, like, especially a team medal. And I think we're at a cool time where, like, we have a lot of talent, we have a lot of experience, and, like, I believe in his guys, and, like, I believe in my ladies. Like, they're so good. And so just trying to get everything in order, but, like, we really can do it, and I think that's a cool feeling to have.
And once you do it, you're gonna switch to saber. And for the final question that we have for you guys, this has been something that I think everyone in this room has tried to get together to figure out. What do you guys think is the best thing that we can do to make this sport more accessible, either for people to start participating in the sport or to increase spectator viewership?
Obviously, it'd be nicer to have more TV coverage, and I think, like you said, we're all trying to figure out how to make it more viewer-friendly, how to simplify it on the broadcast so that people that don't know much about fencing understand what's going on enough to enjoy it. We still hear people say, "Oh, fencing's so artistic," and like, yeah, it's creative, but like they're like, it's like a dance, like, yeah, maybe a physical dance, like, but I don't know if that's any Drive to Survive fans here, F1 fans. I feel like they do a really good job of like making you buy into the sport. They have all the like color commentary and the stories behind the drivers, where like I love it. I don't know anything about the engines or the car or like the technical stuff, and like I can watch it and maybe don't understand the engineering. Maybe you do, but our mechanical engineer over here. But maybe simplifying the explanation, and then as far as like, obviously there's a huge barrier to entry cost-wise for fencing, and I think clubs holding introductory classes and having the equipment for those students is great, but then the next step is like, okay, some of them are gonna love fencing, which is the goal. How do they now afford to like get their own stuff? And hopefully that's something we can figure out. I don't have an answer to it right now. There are foundations like Peace in Brooklyn that our close friend Nzinga started, and it's incredible, like helping a community have access to a sport like fencing, as well as other resources. So hopefully we can have more organizations like that as well.
Agreed.
Good. Well, thank you guys so much for coming all the way up here to talk to us. Let's give them a
Thank you all for coming. This is so fun for us to talk about fencing. It's our favorite.
And I want to give a quick thank you to the 5 college members who helped us write these questions and who have been of support. Thanks to all of you who have arrived today and have supported this new endeavor of UMass Fencing. This is the first time we've ever posted something like this, and I hope we can do it in the future. We'll find out. We have elections soon, so get ready for that. We are going to start the meet and greet section portion of this event. What's going to happen is Seth and Jacob are going to lead you guys by rows to go and say hello and ask any relatively short questions you might have. If you keep it short. And then afterwards, you can leave if you'd like, or you can stay and chat with me. I know I'm also a big, if you want to take photos with me too, you feel free. I have been practicing my signature as well, so we can try that. We have a professional photographer ready. Yeah. And yeah, thank you guys again so much for coming. While we're waiting, some UMass Fencing trivia. Who knows when the club was first created? We just asked these questions.
1896.
That's not right. That's not correct. No, it's not. No, further back. He's the one who knows. Said 69. Is that back? Further back. We're old. I thought you had this memorized.
According to what I saw, it was 1917.
1917. An old club, yes. Great job. Okay.
We have the first row stand up and top line,
As another fun fact, UMass Fencing used to be known as the Mass Disasters. We're working to bring that back.